Hello everyone and welcome back. So in this video we are going to implement the two-factor authentication using this Better Auth on the Next.js with Prisma. So this is basically the project. It's pretty simple. As you can see, if I not sign in, if I go to the dashboard, it should be show this please sign in first. Great. As you can see on the database, everything is just empty for now. And let's try to sign up, right? So I'm gonna put my name, and then my email at gmail.com. And also for the password, I'm going to put 123, 123, 123, click sign up. And now it should be redirect me to the sign in, right? And if you go to the dashboard here, if you take a look, now there's a user that sign up, and then the two-factor enable is false right now, right? By default is false, of course. And here I can sign in. Let's try to click sign in, and it should be automatically redirect me to the dashboard because I'm not yet enabled the two-factor authentication. And as you can see, the two-factor authentication status is not enabled. Alright, so now let's enable that. Here I'm going to click the enable 2FA and I have to confirm my password. So I'm going to do 123, 123, 123. So now as you can see, it should be show this QR code so we can scan that using app like Google Authenticator. So I'm going to scan that with my phone and here we go. I have the number here. So now I'm going to enter the code from this app and I'm going to do 571 and 322. I'm going to verify the code. And then now as you can see, the two-factor authentication status is enabled, right? And now if I sign out and sign in again, it should be not automatically redirect me to the dashboard, but it should be redirect me into the two-factor page because I already enabled the 2FA, right? Alright, so I'm going to click sign in and now as you can see, now I'm on the two-factor authentication and here I have to put the code that available on the Google Authenticator 635 and then 259. Great, so I'm going to click verify and as you can see, I'm on the dashboard right now. Alright, so that's what we are going to learn in this video. Hopefully this video is helpful. So I'm hoping this video not going to be too long and you enjoy the video. So let's get started. Alright, so let's generate a brand new Next.js application. I'm going to call that Better Auth 2FA. So I'm going to hit enter and basically we are going to use the recommended setting, which is I'm going to use TypeScript, ESLint, Tailwind CSS, and the app router. So let's just cd to that folder and just open it using Visual Studio Code. Now we need to install the Better Auth. So let's just click get started, go to installation and just follow along. Here I'm going to copy the command and then just open terminal and then just paste that. And then after that, we need to create the env variable, right? Env file. So I'm going to copy and then paste that. Here we go. So basically I'm going to make a command called Better Auth. And in here, we need to create two environment variable. First is the Better Auth secret. We can generate from here. I'm going to copy and paste. And also we can create the base URL, copy and paste. And then we need to create the auth.ts file. Let's go back to documentation. We need to create this one right here. You can create that on the lib folder or utils folder, whatever you want. I'm going to use lib folder in this case. So I'm going to copy this route and then just paste that. Here we go. So now we have auth.ts file. And because I'm going to use Prisma, so I'm going to copy this one right here, copy, paste it. All right. So let's take a look what happened in here. As you can see, first is basically create variable called Prisma and running that on this Prisma adapter. So basically, I'm not going to initialize Prisma in here. I'm going to do that on the another file. So I'm going to remove that. I think it's fine for now. And for the provider, I'm going to make sure I'm using PostgreSQL. You can use anything you want. It's also fine, basically. As you can see, the Prisma is not undefined, cannot find Prisma because we not create the Prisma. So now, I think there's a nice way to initialize Prisma is you can go to the blog right here. It's written on the prisma.io and you can search prisma.ts and here we go. Right, so I'm going to create prisma.ts file on the lib and what we have to do is just copy and paste. That's it. So this basically will initialize the Prisma using this Prisma PG as you can see in here, but we have to install this package basically. So I'm going to copy and then paste that down here and install Prisma adapter -pg. As you can see now, there is no error, but we have this error because anyway, now we don't have the Prisma client generated. If you go to on the Prisma folder, even we don't have the Prisma folder. So now let's install the Prisma. So I'm going to run this npm install Prisma as a dev dependency. And then we need to just run the npx prisma init like this. So now we have this Prisma folder and schema.prisma. Here we go. Right, so as you can see, it's basically will create the Prisma client on the lib/generated/Prisma. So I think it's fine. And also we have the prisma.config.ts, and as you can see, the data source URL should be on the process.env database URL. So we have to create database URL environment variable on the env file. So I think I'm going to just remove all this command, and I'm going to paste this database right here, database URL called PostgreSQL://Postgres: password and etc. So this is basically PostgreSQL on my local. So as you can see, this one right here. And I add the public URL as well to localhost 3000. Nice, that's for the environment variable. Let's go back in here. As you can see, now it's still not available because we don't yet running npx prisma generate, right? If I run that, it's basically will generate the Prisma client on the generated Prisma. So let's hit enter. Now let's take a look in here. We have the generated folder, right? Nice. Let's go back and hopefully, I think the path is not correct. So we can just import that using this auto import in here. And yeah, I think this one right here, generated/prisma/client. Nice, everything is work. Let's go back to auto.ts. We need to just import the Prisma. Here we go. So don't forget to go back to the prisma.config. As you can see, it's basically will import the .env config. So anyway, we have to install this .env. So I'm going to copy this npm install as a dev dependency .env like this, right? It's basically, I think it's required on this file. So next, basically, we need to create the schema. Let's go back to documentation of Better Auth. And then let's just scroll down. As you can see, we can generate the schema using this npx Better Auth CLI generate. I'm going to copy and paste that to the terminal, hit enter. This basically will override the schema.prisma. As you can see, we get not found things right here because we don't yet install the Prisma client. So let's just install the Prisma client. So after we install the add Prisma client package, now we can just run this again, right? Better Auth CLI generate. And as you can see, we have this question. It's basically will override the schema. So I'm going to say yes. And here we go. Everything is generated automatically. Super nice. So anyway, because we want to enable the two-factor authentication, we have to create another model called 2FA, I believe. So let's go to the plugins and two-factor right here. And as you can see, I'm going to scroll down and see the schema right here. I'm going to click that. And then as you can see, we have to create the table called two-factor, and we have to have this ID, user ID, and etc. And on the user table, we have to add this two-factor enable because now on the user, we don't have yet, right? So there is a automatic way to do that, which is on the auto.ts. You can just you can just enable the 2FA, but of course you can always adding that manually if you want. But I'm going to do that automatically. So I'm going to paste this email and password enable to true, and the plugins, I'm going to setting that to two-factor. It's basically come from this Better Auth plugins. So after we adding this plugin and email and password enable to true, it's basically when I run the Better Auth CLI generated again, it's basically will add automatically the require field, require table as well on here. So let's try. Here I'm going to hit enter and see what happened. So we should have a question, right? As you can see, it's basically will override the schema again. I'm going to do yes, and as you can see, now on the user we have this two-factor enable to a boolean, and also we have new table called two-factor, right? That's nice. So after the schema is done, don't forget to run npx prisma generate, right? And then just run the npx prisma db push to see the table on the database, npx prisma db push. and then just run the npx Prisma Studio to see the database. npx Prisma Studio. That's it. This basically will open the Prisma Studio for us. Let's take a look. As you can see, we have this account, session, two-factor, user, and verification. Everything is set up pretty nice. Now what we have to do is let's try to see on the documentation. Go to the installation, and I think next we have to create the mount handler. Yep. So here we need to create the API out and route.ts file. I'm going to copy that and go app, paste that. What we have to do is just copy and paste. Super simple. And then we need to create the client instance. So I'm going to create this out-client.ts on the lib basically. What we have to do is just copy that and paste it. I remember on the plugins and then two-factor, basically we have to update that as well. As you can see in here on the out, we already update the plugins, right? And anyway, on the out client as well, we need to put the plugin as well in here. So I'm going to paste that. There we go. Now we have these plugins on the out client as well. So let's import the two-factor client, and here we go. I think we're done with all the setup in here, right? Let's go back to the installation, and hopefully everything should be done. Yep, I think it's done. So now what we have to do is let's just create really simple UI. So for the UI, I just want to copy and paste, and I'm not going to make you confused about the UI stuff because I'm going to always focus on the functionality of the app. So anyway, I just want to copy and paste this final home component. Really simple, that have a heading one, some p tag in here, and we have some link, right? We have sign in, sign up, and go to dashboard. Let's save and let's take a look. This is the result, right? So if I click, for example, sign in, it will go through the sign in page. Now it's not yet available. Inside the app folder, I'm going to create sign in / page.tsx, and then let's do RFC, and here we go, right? That's the sign in. If I click the sign in, now we have sign in page. I'm going to paste this really simple component here, really simple UI that have this input, email, and password, and also we have the button called sign in. Of course, we need to create the email and password state in here because we're using use state in this component. Of course, we have to change this component to the client component using use client. And also don't forget to create the submit function when we click the sign in button. Here we go. So let's take a look at the sign in UI. It's look like this. Super simple. Let's go to sign up right now. All right, as you can see, we have the sign in folder / page.tsx, and then inside that I create this sign up component. As you can see, we have 3 state: name, email, and password, and also the submit function as well. And in here on the sign up, we have name field, we have an email and a password, and also a button for sign up. Just that's it. Really similar. So let's take a look. The sign up look like. Here we go. And also I create the dashboard component. As you can see, app / dashboard / page.tsx. This is the code look like. We have the session for now is null, right? The default value. If the session doesn't have any value, it should be show display sign in first. And then in here, if user already signed in, as you can see, we have the welcome session user.name, and then two-factor authentication status enable or not enable. That's it. So let's take a look. If I open the dashboard, now it should be show please sign in first. So now we can try to sign up. But first, I'm going to open my Prisma Studio on another terminal. In here, I can say npx Prisma Studio. So you can see the user that signed up, right? But make sure on the sign up page in here, we do something on the submit, of course. We have to run this out client, right? Out client come from this out client.ts file. As you can see, we just running the create out client in here. So we can run the out client.signup.email and then put the name, the email, and then the password. And then in here, after user successfully sign up, we just post the user to the sign in page. Just simple as that. So in here, I'm going to create router, set equals to use router, come from the next/navigation. All right, so now let's try to sign up here on this database. As you can see, user is basically an empty, right? So let's go back to localhost 3000, and I'm going to put my name, my email at gmail.com, and the password I'm going to do 123 Nice. So let's click sign up, and as you can see on the terminal, what happened? As you can see, it already make a post request on this URL, and we have 200 respond back. That means everything is okay, it's successful. If you go back in here, now we on the sign in automatically. And if you go back to database, if I refresh, of course, we have one user that signed up in here. My email, the email verification is false, and etc. This is my name, and the two-factor enable is also false for now. We successfully sign up, and let's try to sign in. Okay, because now there's no functionality on this sign in. Basically, what we have to do is pretty similar. So that's why I just want to copy and paste, come from the sign up. That's it. And we are going to import the auth client in order to using sign up. Now we have to using sign in function, right? Sign in.email. We don't have to use this name basically. And of course, we need to create a router variable. All right, so it should be redirect me to the dashboard. And anyway, inside this function here, we can put another object, and then in here we can run a function. So the function is basically on success function, and then in here we can grab the context. So I can do context like this, and then now we can just check if the context dot data dot two-factor redirect is true. What I'm gonna do is should be redirect user to the another page which is on the /2-factor, and else what I'm gonna do, user should be go to the dashboard. So anyway, what I check in here is basically if this let me just show you right here. If the two-factor enable is true, user is basically should be redirect to the two-factor page. But if that false, user should be just let go to the dashboard page. That's it. Let's try. Here I'm going to sign in, email, and I'm going to try to put a wrong password, for example. So let's take a look what happened. If I click sign in, it should be not do anything, right? But as you can see on the terminal, we have this invalid password. Of course, you can always show the error message on the UI, but for now, I'm not going to do that because it's too much work. So after it's wrong, of course, we have to put the right password, which is 123. If I click sign in, now we should go to the dashboard, right? As you can see in here, but we still get this please sign in first because the value of session is basically null, right? Always null. So the session value should become from this out.api.get session, and then we paste these headers with headers, right? The headers should become from the next/headers, and this is the way we get the session. And if we don't have any session, it should be show this one. But now we already signed in, and then of course we have session value, and as you can see in here we have the welcome, my name, and then etc. The two-factor authentication status is not enabled because this one right here, right? The session.user.two-factor enable is false. Of course, you can always try change the value. For example, this one here, I'm going to change that to true, for example. Click this one, refresh, just make sure everything is updated. If I refresh, now it should be enabled, right? Let's go back to false, refresh it, not enable. Now I'm going to create another file inside the dashboard folder. I'm going to call that enable2fa.tsx. This is basically component. First, I'm going to make sure I get a session props in this enable2fa, and let's try to send that session. Let's call that on the dashboard right here. So let's just import the component, and then now we should see this enable2fa component. So I'm going to paste this condition in here. As you can see, if the session.user.two-factor enable is false, I'm going to show this button. So basically user can enable the 2FA using this button right here. And if this already true, it should be show this text 2FA is already enabled. So now let's create the start enable 2FA function on the top right here. For now, just empty function. So let's take a look on the browser. As you can see, we have this error. The reason is because this component is basically server component, but we create on-click event. So that's why we have to change this component to the client component. And let's take a look. We have this button right here, right? Because now we already signed in, I want to add another button for sign out, right? So inside the dashboard folder, I'm going to create another component called sign out button. So anyway, I just want to copy and paste this component. It's called sign out button. And as you can see in here, we just have a button. When I click the sign out button, it will run the handle sign out. And this is basically just running the out client.sign out. And that's it. So let's just copy and paste, and I'm going to import that. Now we should see the button. Here we go. So now let's take a look. If I click the sign up button, it should be redirect me back to the root of the application. And now if I go back to dashboard, I cannot see my name because now I'm not logged in. So let's try to sign in, and I'm going to basically enable the 2FA authentication. So let's try to put my email and then password 123123123, sign in. And now I'm on the dashboard. Great. So now I'm going to make sure this button works. So let's try to go to the enable 2FA, this button right here. So we're going to working with this function basically. So the way we enable the two-factor authentication is pretty simple. What we have to do is just running this function right here, out client.twofactor.enable, and then we paste this password and then the issuer. It's basically whatever you want to put in here. So this is basically the password. The way I want to get the password is I'm going to use a prompt. This is basically prompt by default that's available on the browser. I'm going to paste that in here. So as you can see now, if I trying to click this button, it's basically will show this prompt. Let's try to do that. If I click that, as you can see here, this is the prompt browser by default. If I put any password, it should be save that in this pass variable and then sending that in this pass right here. All right, so first we need to create a state to handle the step. So here I'm going to create this state in here. As you can see, first we have the indel and then key-r and then verify. So by default, it's basically indel. And in here, I'm going to check that if data.2tp-URI have a value after we make two-factor enable, what we have to do in here is I'm going to make sure the step is key-r right now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another state as well. So this is basically 2tp-URI. And then I'm going to make sure what I'm going to do is I'm going to store the 2TP URL on that state. So we can do set 2TP URL into the data.2TP URI. So now we can add this condition. If the step is key-r, I'm going to show this heading 3 and then this image. So as you can see, this image is have this source basically https://api key-r server and etc. And as you can see, this data, this is the important part. It should be encode URI component, this 2TP URI. And if I go back in here, as you can see, if I put the password 123123123, click OK. And as you can see, the key-r it should be render, right? That's pretty nice because we're using this URL here. And also there is a backup code, right? So here I'm going to paste that a state backup code. And then let's try to set the value here. So I'm going to run that in here, set backup codes into the data.backup code. Great. So now we can just render that in here. Here we go. So now let's take a look. If I enable 2FA, I'm going to put my password and then click OK. As you can see, now we should have the image and then we have the backup code, right? That's pretty nice. And then here, I'm going to put the verify the code. So I'm going to create an input in here. As you can see, we have this input and then the button to verify the code. And here, of course, we have to create the code state as well on the top. And also we need to create the function, which is verify initial code function. So the function is basically pretty simple. Here, I'm going to paste that. As you can see, the verify initial code is basically running a async function. It awaits for the out client.twofactor.verify 2TP and then code set equals to code, right? Code is basically come from the state. And then here on verify, refresh page to update 2FA status. And that's it. So now we can just try it. Here I'm going to enable 2FA, put my password. For example, I put the wrong password. If I click OK, nothing should be happen, right? Cool. If I do with a right password, click OK, and it should be render the image so we can scan this QR code basically. So I'm going to try with my phone in here, and great, I have the value. So I'm going to enter the value in here. So now let's verify the code and hopefully it works. Great. As you can see here, the two-factor authentication status is enabled right now. So let's try to sign out, and then let's try to sign in, and hopefully now it should be not just redirect me to the dashboard, but redirect me to the 2FA page. But the problem is we not yet have that page, right? So let's open the sign in page. As you can see in here, if the context.data.2factor redirect is true, it's basically redirect user to /2factor page, and else is basically redirect user to the dashboard. But now we don't yet have this 2-factor page, right? So let's create that. So let's create the folder on the app in here, 2factor/page.tsx. Alright, so I already created the 2factor/page.tsx file, and then I'm gonna paste this UI in here. As you can see, the 2-factor is basically very simple. We have the heading to the input, alright? And then the value is stored on the code state. And then in here, if something error happens, just show the error. And here we have the button to verify. That's it. So now let's try go to the 2-factor. So now as you can see, the UI is basically look like this, really simple. So we can verify the 6-digit code in here. So how do we verify the code? It's pretty simple. Basically, in this function, I'm gonna paste this await out client .2factor.verify to TP, and then in here we paste the code set equals to code come from the input field, and trust device I'm gonna setting that to false, right? And also if something wrong happened, I'm gonna do if verify error, we have a value in here. I'm gonna set the error to that verify error, or just put this error text in here. And if there's no error or it's successful, I'm gonna make sure I push the user to the dashboard page. So let's create the router. All right, so now everything should be fine, but I think in here, I'm gonna make sure the set error should be back to an empty string in here. So now we can just try it. Here, I'm going to go back. Let's try to sign in with my email, my password. I'm gonna click sign in, and now hopefully it should be redirect me to the 2-factor, which is great. If I put a wrong number, if I click verify, as you can see, we have invalid code. Nice, right? So now let's put with the correct value come from the app. I'm gonna do 211775, and then click verify, and hopefully great. As you can see, now we on the dashboard, and then 2-factor authentication status is enabled. That's pretty simple, right? That's how we implement the 2FA on the Next.js using the Better Auth with Prisma. So hopefully this video helpful, guys. See you on the next video.